This story was not written on paper, it was embroidered with silence, longing and fine thread. Welcome to the Grandma's Diaries channel. Here, every memory still pulsates like embers in a wood-burning stove. Subscribe now, leave your like, and tell me, which lit window reminded you of home? The kitchen light was still on. Yellow, weak, but firm in the dark of the yard, like a heart beating slowly. I woke up early, as always, before the sun, before the rooster, before the world started moving. I put the coffee pot on the fire. The sound of metal heating up calmed me. A slight hiss, an ancient hiss, the same sound as 20 years ago when I moved into the trailer out back. The smell of ground coffee slowly rose, with a touch of cinnamon. It was my ritual, my way of saying, I am here, the house is alive. Derek, my grandson, knocked on the door loudly. It wasn't a light touch, not even a good morning, Grandma. It was a punch in the silence, an interruption. He was with his wife Vanessa in a white robe, hair tied up, empty look. He said, Grandma, we need to talk. His voice was shaking, but not of sadness. I was trembling with calculation, of planning, of something already decided. I sat on the wooden chair, the same one I used for 2 decades. The torn upholstery, the left arm is loose, but I liked it, because it was mine, because I chose to. He didn't sit down. He stood up, as if the trailer floor was contaminated. He said, I lost my job, that the hospital cut the night shift, that the palliative care unit was closed, that I can no longer pay my share. I looked at him, for the eyes that once called me mother, to the mouth that once said, Grandma, I love you more than anything. And he continued, and that, because of that, I would have to leave. In 3 days. 3 days. It wasn't a request, it was a sentence. I looked at the kitchen light, for the coffee maker, for the cup with my name engraved, made of wood, by him, at the age of 9, with crooked letters, with a heart on the side. It was still there, on the shelf. Dusty. But present. And I thought, does love also have an expiration date? The coffee was bubbling, it was smoking. He called, but nobody was going to drink. No one would smell it. No one would remember. Vanessa said, we need the space. It will become an office desk. A cold word, no smell, nor memory. Soulless. I looked at the stove, for the pot of beans I cooked yesterday, for the dish towel embroidered with my name, for the photo on the wall, me and him, at the lake, aged 10. Smiling. Wet. Happy. All that was going to disappear, as if it never existed. And I knew, in that instant, they were erasing my presence, not just the house, but from his memory. It wasn't just the trailer, it was the smell of the bread I baked on Sundays. It was the sound of my voice, reading bedtime stories. It was the warmth of his hand in mine as we crossed the street. All of this was going to become an office, a place with Wi-Fi, with ergonomic chair, with silence, no coffee, no cinnamon, which Wade. Derek said, you understand, right, Grandma? It's just a practical matter. Practice. That word cut me. More than I can't do it anymore, more than you have to go, because it said, you are no longer useful, you are no good, you are a problem to be solved. I remained silent, not out of fear, not out of sadness, out of disbelief, as someone I created with my own hands, that I held in my arms when I was feverish, that I fed with my nursing salary. Can you treat me like an old piece of furniture, as if I were an object, disposable? I looked at the kitchen light, still lit, but I knew, the next night, it would no longer be lit. And when the sun rose, there would be no coffee. No smell. It doesn't matter. Just an empty trailer, and a house that forgot who kept it alive for 20 years. The trailer had a small window, with patchwork curtain, made by me, with old fabrics from the old house. Blue plaid, beige. Colors that reminded me of my mother. Every morning, the sunlight slowly entered, first on the wooden floor, then on the sofa. Finally, on my face. It was my alarm clock, more faithful than any watch. I lived there for 20 years, since Derek's mom left. One night, without warning, he just left a suitcase open in the living room, and a note. I can't take it anymore. I looked at Derek. He was 5 years old. Red eyes, hand holding a teddy bear, without understanding, and I said, it's okay, son, I'll take care of you. And I did. From that day on, the trailer became my world, my refuge. My sacrifice. That's where I worked night and day. Nurse at rural hospital. Night shift. It smelled of disinfectant, sweat, and stale coffee. He came back with swollen feet, back hurting. But he entered smiling because he needed me. I was the one who woke up with him before school. In the winter, I turned on the gas heater. The sound of the hissing calmed me. The smell of hot metal, the heat that rose slowly. I was the one who ironed the uniform. I passed by with love, carefully, as if each fold were a prayer. I was the one who made lunch. Rice and beans, fried egg, toast bread, everything smells like home. I was the one who went to the football game. I sat on the metal bleachers. Free, wet, but I stayed until the end, because he looked for me with his eyes after the goal. And smile. I was the one who cried when he graduated. That day, I wore the blue dress, the same one I wore at my wedding. There was no other good one, but it didn't matter. My joy was greater than the old fabric. He went up on stage. They said his name. He looked at me, and he waved. At that moment, I thought, it was worth every sleepless night. It was worth every turn. It was worth every pain. He said, everything I am is for you, Grandma. And I believed. I believed so much that I forgot who I was before I was Grandma, before being a foster mother, before being the one who takes care of. Every night before I went to sleep, I would run my hand along the wall. I could feel the texture of the cold metal, the smell of old wood, the sound of the wind hitting the window. And he prayed. I prayed for him. He prayed for me. I prayed that one day he would remember, because I knew that time erases, that comfort forgets, that love, when given in excess, becomes invisibility. But I continued, because love is not a choice, it's instinct, it's blood, it's destiny. The trailer smelled like homemade soap of wet earth, of baked bread on Sundays. There was the sound of a radio, playing old songs, in low voices, of contained laughter. It had the texture of a worn sheet, of a creaking rocking chair, in worn-out slippers. And there was light, a yellow light, weak, but constant, like a heart beating slowly. It was Grandma's light, the light of the house, the light of memory. But now, even the trailer would be an office, a place with W-I-V. With glass table, with silence, no smell. I'm here, soulless, Vanessa said. It will be a productive space, productive. Another cold word. No heat. No history. As if 20 years of love were just a space to be optimized. And I knew, in that moment, it wasn't just the trailer they wanted to delete. It was my existence. It was my story. It was my place in the world. The check from the sale of my parents' farm was for $30,000. That's what I paid for his first installment of college. I kept a picture of the house in my apron pocket. Every now and then, he ran his finger along the frame. I could smell the garden, from the oratory, under the stairs, from the stream that ran behind the pasture. I sold everything for him, and he gave me a hug. And you're the best, Grandma. But he never gave me back what I lost, not even what I delivered, nor the right to grow old in peace. That night, after the conversation, I sat on the floor of the trailer. The floor was cold, my hands were shaking. I opened the drawer where I kept the letters. The photos, the drawings he made at school, the note he wrote, "You are my second mother." Tears fell. They were not of sadness, they were of disappointment, because I saw, for the first time, that love is not guaranteed, that caring is not rewarded, that blood is not stronger than selfishness. And there, on the floor, with the smell of homemade soap in the air, I made a promise. If I leave, I won't go as a beggar. I go as a woman. I go as someone who still has value. My parents' farm was a piece of me. There were trees that I knew by name. An oak tree in the background, a willow near the stream, an apple tree that my mother planted the day I was born. Played on the wooden porch. With the rope swing, the smell of walnut cake in the oven, the sound of the radio, playing old songs. That's where I dreamed. I dreamed of being a nurse. To get married. In having children. But life chose another path. My brother died young. My father left soon after. My mother got sick and I stayed. I took care of her until the end, alone, without help, no time for me. When she was gone, the farm was all I had left. My root, my story, my identity. But then, Derek's mom left. He was 5 years old, eyes full of fear, hand holding a teddy bear, and I knew I couldn't think about myself. I had to think about him. I sold the farm, I signed the papers, I received the check, and I gave most of it to his college. The rest I used to buy simple furniture for the trailer, a new mattress, a refrigerator that didn't make noise, patchwork curtains. I thought, he will study, will graduate, it's going to be someone, and you will remember me. But he graduated, got married, he forgot, and now, he kicked me out as if I were an old piece of furniture. A mistake in the budget, a burden. I sat on the floor, with the photo of the house in hand. The paper was yellowed, the frayed edge. I ran my thumb across the kitchen window, where my mother stayed, in the morning, with the cup of coffee, the embroidered apron, and I thought, she taught me to care, but nobody taught me how to take care of myself. The wind blew against the trailer window, the patchwork curtain trembled, the smell of wet earth wafted in, and I knew that it wasn't just the house I lost, it was myself. I lost my youth, my freedom, my name. I ended up being Grandma Love. What a care, but who took care of me? Nobody. And there, on the cold floor, with the photo in his hand and his heart in pieces, I understood. I can no longer live by the memory of others. I need to live for mine. I got up. I cleaned my face. I picked up the suitcase. I started keeping what was mine. Not everything, just the essentials. The wooden cup, the embroidered apron, my mother's Bible, my father's portrait. The rest, what we built, what we live, what he decided to erase. But I wasn't going to delete it with him. I was going to take my story, my dignity, my light. And when I closed the suitcase, I whispered to the wind, I am not a burden, I am a woman, and I still have a long way to go. The first place I went was the Pine Grove Motel, a name that sounded welcoming, like a childhood camp. Pine trees, fireplace, silence, but the reality was different. The sign was flashing, red light, intermittent, as a warning, like an irregular heartbeat. I stopped the car. The asphalt was cracked. The tall grass licked the wheels. A flat tire lay near the reception desk. I paid in advance, in cash. The man behind the counter didn't even look at me. Unshaven, red eyes, dirty shirt. He just said, room 7, key in the door. Open the door. The smell hit me hard. Bread, old cigarette. Urine, something rotten. The air conditioning hissed. Like a wounded animal. The bed creaked, just under my weight. The mattress sank in the center, as if I had already carried a lot of pain. I pulled back the sheets, rough yellowish, with spots that I didn't want to identify. I sat on the edge. My hands were shaking, not from the cold, of emptiness. For the first time in 45 years, I wasn't taking care of anyone. There was no coffee to be made, no uniform to iron, no remedy to organize, just me, alone, in a cheap motel room. The clock read 8:17. It was still early, but I felt at the end of the day, at the end of life. I got up. I went to the bathroom. The faucet was dripping, a slow sound, insistent, like a tear that won't stop. I looked in the mirror. My face was pale, deep, dark circles, unkempt hair, and for the first time, I didn't see Grandma. I didn't see the nurse. I didn't see the woman who can handle anything. Eleanor, a 65-year-old woman, alone, despised, discarded. I sat on the bathroom floor. I leaned against the cold walls. I closed my eyes. And then, I heard in the next room. A couple was screaming, cutting words, insults, an object breaking in the hallway. A baby was crying. Choro Fino, desperate, no response. And in my room, just the sound of the air conditioning. From the clock, from my heart. I pulled my knees to my chest. I hesitated, and then, I let it out. I cried, not a silent cry, not a single tear held back. I cried as if my chest was going to break. Deep sobs, tremors, pain that had been going on for decades. I cried for the young woman I was, full of dreams, of plans, of ambition. I cried for the nurse I abandoned, for the scientific article I never published, for the life that could have been. I cried for the years on duty, alone, on holidays, for his birthdays that I never missed, for mine that I don't even remember. I cried because I sold my house, my root, my last piece of me, for him, and now, he saw me as a burden, a mistake in the budget, a negative number, asterisk, and for the first time, I felt the weight of not being loved back. When the tears were gone, the room was colder, more empty. More real. I got up. I washed my face. The mirror fogged up, but I kept looking and I whispered, I won't die here. Not out of pride, not out of anger, for dignity. Opened to the stock market. I took out my cell phone. It was turned off. Since yesterday, I touched the screen. Multiple notifications. missed calls, messages, but I didn't open it. Not yet. I called the only number I had left, Mrs. Delaney's attorney, Dr. Thompson. He answered on the second ring. Calm voice. Professional. These, I need to speak to you. Sir, it's urgent. There was a pause. Short. Loaded. He replied. Mrs. Calloway, I think I know what you came to tell me. Andate that moment. No quarto sete do Pine Grove Motel. Smelling of mold and heartbreak, something inside me changed. It was no hope. Not yet. It was attention. Someone was listening to me. Someone knew I existed. And maybe, just maybe, my story hadn't ended on the floor of a cheap motel. Maybe it was just beginning. The number came out of his mouth like a dream. $15 million. I closed my eyes. I felt the weight of the words. 15 millions. It wasn't just a number. It was a revolution for once. I wasn't asking, I was choosing. Dr. Thompson's office was quiet, luxurious. With the smell of varnished wood, soft carpet, leather chairs. He looked at me with respect, as if I were someone, as if my presence had value. He showed the papers, one by one, carefully, as if every line were sacred trust. The bill, the name, Eleanor Marie Calloway. It was written, signed, sealed. It was real. I ran my hand over the paper. I could feel the relief of the paint, the smell of an official document, the weight of truth. 15 million. It wasn't just money. It was freedom. It was dignity. It was recognition. Because someone, at the end of their life, saw me. He saw me as a person. Not as an aunt. Not as a maid. Not as a burden. Like Eleanor. I remained silent. Not out of shock. Out of reverence. Because I knew, in that instant, my life was not in vain. Even though Derek kicked me out. Even though Vanessa treated me like trash. Even if the world has forgotten me. Someone remembered. Someone said thank you. Someone left me a legacy. I got up, my legs were shaking, but my hands were steady. I asked, and what do I do now? Dr. Thompson smiled, a calm smile, of someone who knows that destiny has just changed. Now, you decide. Decide. That word pierced me, like a key, like a door opening. For 45 years, I decided nothing. I always chose for him. You always give in. I always erased myself. But now it was my turn. He handed over an envelope, thick white with the bank logo inside, a check $50,000 advance to begin with and a key, not from a car, not from a safe, but from an apartment. I booked a suite at the Four Seasons. It's temporary, but it's a start. Four Seasons. I laughed. It was a weak laugh, of those who do not believe, of someone who was never valued. I thought about the motel, in the musty smell, in the creaking bed on the cold floor, and there, in the luxurious office, with a check for $50,000 in hand, I understood. Money doesn't change who you are, but it reveals who you've always been. Ice was not a burden. I've never been. I was a woman who loved too much, who worked too much, who forgot about himself, but in the end, was seen. I was seen. I was seen by a stranger, for a soul that, on its deathbed, whispered, "You deserve more." And now, I had the power to choose. Not for revenge, not out of pride. For justice, for real, for me. I left the office. The sun was shining on his face, the wind in your hair, and for the first time in decades, I wasn't going home. I was going on with my life. She came with coffee. In a disposable cup, the ones with a plastic lid. No handle. No heat. She was dressed as if she were going to a business meeting. Gray blazer, high heel shoes, asterisk, hair tied up. Empty look. Vanessa. He stopped at the door of my new apartment. Didn't enter. He didn't greet. I just said, "Grandma, let's help you." I used grandma, as if he still had the right. He said there was a senior clinic, with furniture included, meals served, scheduled activities, as if I were just any old person, a problem to be solved. I looked at her, for the eyes that never looked at me with affection, to the mouth that never called me mother, to the hands that never helped me up, and I saw what Derek saw, an old woman, a dependent, an account in the budget. But I wasn't that woman anymore. She was no longer the permanent guest. It was no longer the burden. Answer. I already have a place. She laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh. It was a short smile, of someone who finds a mistake funny, of those who do not believe. He asked, where? As if it were impossible for me to have chosen something for myself. I said, I'll show you. I called a car. Luxurious. Silent. Therefore, with a driver wearing white gloves. She came in, suspicious, careful, as if the bank was going to go bankrupt. I took her to my new apartment, on top of a building overlooking the river. Private garden, stone, fountain. White flowers in the vase. Opened the door. The scent of jasmine filled the air, as if the house breathed. She was speechless. I've never seen a place like this, so calm. So full of light. So for mine. He looked around the room, for dark wood furniture, for the beige linen sofa, to the fine china cup on the table, with my name engraved in gold. And then, I saw fear in her eyes. It wasn't admiration, it was fear. Fear that I wouldn't need them anymore. Fear that control had changed hands. I went to the kitchen. I put the coffee pot on the fire. The sound of the hissing calmed me. The same sound as the trailer, but now, in a new environment, clean, respected. I came back with 2 cups. I handed one over. She picked it up carefully, as if it were going to break. This is my place. She looked at the cup, for the rising steam, for the smell of cinnamon, and he asked, does Derek know? I smiled, not yet. She took a sip, slowly, as if trying to understand, and then, he whispered, are you well? It was the first time anyone had asked me that. Not, how are you, but are you okay? With eyes, with a trembling voice, with regret. I didn't respond angrily. I didn't respond with pride. I just looked at her and he said, now yes. And in that instant, she knew it wasn't just the apartment. It wasn't just the money. It was peace. It was dignity. It was freedom. She couldn't buy that. Not with all the contracts in the world. When he left the cup on the table. Full, as if he didn't have the courage to finish, and I stood there, in the window, looking at the river. Smelling jasmine. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for anyone. I was living. I ran my hand over the bed. Egyptian cotton. Sheets. Wine color. Soft as a cloud. It wasn't the hard motel mattress, not even the trailer's squeaking springs. It was a mattress that hugged, who respected the tired body. I bought flowers every week. Red roses, white orchids, pink carnations. I put it in a ceramic pot. Blue. With jasmine designs, the same scent my mother used on her sheets. I signed the theater. The concert, the cinema. For the first time in 40 years, I chose something just for me. I went to the salon, a small place, smelling like almond, shampoo, antique chairs, large mirrors. The hairdresser looked at me. He asked, what do you want? I said, I want to see myself. She smiled, not with pity, with respect. I cut my hair short, at chin height, light blonde, and when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see grandma, neither does the nurse, not even the woman who forgot. Eleanor, my mother, called me that. Before the world erases me. Eleanor. Not grandma, not aunt, not the one who cares. My skin was marked for the time, by the sun, for the sleepless nights, but my eyes were alive. They shone. Not from sadness, not out of anger, but of recognition. For the first time, I was looking at myself not for what others needed, not for what I should be, for who I am. I went back to the apartment. I opened the windows. The wind came in. It brought the smell of rain, of wet earth, of freedom. I had my coffee on the terrace, with the sun shining on your face, the wind in your hair, the scent of jasmine in the air, and for the first time, I wasn't waiting for anyone. I was living. Not for him, not out of obligation, not for survival, by choice. I picked up the fine china cup, the same one I used the day I received the money. I still had my name engraved in gold, Eleanor. I sipped the coffee, slowly, like someone savoring every sip, and I thought, how many times have I made coffee for others? How many times have I seen steam rise without smelling it? How many times have I given love without receiving it back? But now it was different. The coffee was mine, the time was mine, the silence was mine, and I was in no hurry. There was no need to run, there was no need to prove anything, it just needed to exist. I went to the bookshelf. I took out a book, a novel I bought. As a child, I never had time to read. I opened it to the first page. I'd started reading. Slowly, like someone who meets an old friend again. And for the first time in decades, I was at peace. It wasn't noisy happiness. It wasn't loud laughter. It was complete. Silence. It was presence. It was dignity. And in the background, I knew I didn't need 15 million to be worth something. I just needed courage to choose myself. Money gave me freedom, but it was I who gave myself value. The phone rang. So does Derek. Again. There were already 7 calls, 9 messages, all more urgent than the previous one. To wait, not out of weakness, for clarity. He began without greeting. Grandma, this is ridiculous. His voice was hard, impatient, as if I were a late employee. You can't just disappear like that. I looked out the window. The sun was shining on the river. The trees swayed slowly. The world followed, even without him. Answer, I'm not disappearing, Derek. I'm settling in. Silence. A heavy silence. From those who don't understand. From those who don't want to understand, he insisted. I was worried. You disappeared from the motel. No one knew where you were. I thought about laughing. But it wasn't sadness. It was irony. Worried. After calling me a burden. After I scheduled the demolition of my trailer. After giving me 3 days to disappear. I asked, did you call the motel yesterday? Or just now, after Dr. Thompson called you? More silence. And then he changed his tune. It got smoother. More false. Grandma, I understand that you are upset, but we can solve this. Maybe I was harsh, but it was just a practical matter. Practice, that word again. As if love were a budget item. I continued, you said I was a financial problem that could no longer sustain my presence, and now you want to solve it. He took a deep breath like someone preparing for an audience. Look, I can help you find an apartment. Near here. We can help with the rent. Help. Money. Conditions. As if I needed it. As if I were still begging for a corner. Answer, I already have a place. He laughed. A short laugh. Of disbelief. Where? At the Pinheiros Motel? I didn't respond angrily. I answered truthfully. I'm at the Four Seasons apartment. 1207. View of the river. Egyptian cotton bed. Coffee with cinnamon every morning. Total silence. This time, different. It wasn't disdain. It was fear. Fear that I didn't need him anymore. Fear that control had changed hands. He returned, more quietly. This is temporary, right? I smiled. Alone. In the window. No. It's permanent. Just like the money Mrs. Delaney left me. I heard him swallow hard, as if reality had just slapped him in the face. He asked, how much? It wasn't, how are you? It wasn't, I'm sorry. It was how much? And at that moment, I knew. His love was never for me. It was for what I could give, or for what I could receive. Now that he came back, not out of affection for interest. It doesn't matter how much, Derek. What matters is that now, I choose. He tried again, but we are family. We should stay together. Family. Once again. That word as a weapon. As guilt. As a chain. Answer, family doesn't expel those they love. Family does not schedule demolition in place where someone lived for 20 years. A family doesn't treat a lifetime of care like a mistake in the budget. Silence, and then he said, almost whispering, I just wanted to protect you. Protect. What a strange word. Coming from the one who threw me out on the street. Answer, you didn't protect me when I needed it. Now, you don't have to pretend. And I hung up. Not angry. With peace. I went to the kitchen. I put the coffee pot on the fire. The scent of cinnamon filled the air. And for the first time, I wasn't making coffee out of obligation. I was doing it for myself, because I deserved it. And because, even if he never said grandma again, I was still Eleanor, and that no one could take me away. 3 weeks later, I received a box. Small. Made of wood. With the scent of cedar. There was no sender. Just my name, Eleanor Calloway. Handwritten. Fine. Print. Familiar. I opened it slowly, as if it were sacred. Inside a yellowed envelope, old paper frayed, edges. As if it had been stored for years. Manuscript. With faded blue paint. Sr. Delaney's era. My mind went back to the hospital, to room 312.2, the bed near the window, where she stood, with her eyes closed, the hand trembling, the weak breathing. Went every day. I was carrying tea. He wiped her face with the cloth. Read passages from the Bible. He held her hand when the pain tightened. She never had a family. Nobody visited. Nobody cared. Just me. On the last day, she whispered, you deserve more than what they give you. Auntie died. In silence, with a slight smile. And now, Months later, she spoke again, there on paper slowly, like someone who prays. My dear Eleanor, if you're reading this, it's because I'm already gone, but I want you to know, it wasn't just the money I left you, it was also the courage to live. You took care of me when no one else did. You held my hand when I was afraid to die. And for that, I give you something greater than wealth, the right to be happy. Use this money, not for revenge, but to plant hope, that creates something that gives light to those who have been erased, because the world needs more people like you, with eternal love. Margaret Delaney. My hands were shaking, not from the cold of recognition. Tears fell. They were not of sadness, they were of relief, because someone, at the end of life, saw me, not as an aunt, not as a maid, not as a burden, as a person, as a woman, like Eleanor. I ran my finger over the signature. I could feel the relief of the paint, the smell of paper, the weight of those words, and I understood the will was not about money, it was about courage, about dignity, about recognized love. She didn't leave me 15 million, she gave me back my soul for 45 years. I was invisible. I made coffee, I ironed the uniform, I paid bills, I took care of everyone. But nobody took care of me, and now, a stranger, in the silence of death, gave me back what the world tried to erase. I got up, I went to the bookshelf that I took my mother's Bible, I opened it and bookmarked Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a future and a hope. I closed my eyes, and for the first time, I believed not in miracles, not in revenge, in divine justice. I returned to the table. I placed the letter next to the cup with my name, made of wood, made by Derek. I looked at her, for the crooked heart, for the uneven letters, and listen, no hate, no grudge, peace, because even though he kicked me out, even though you called me a burden, even if you have erased my presence, I was still capable of loving, and that no one could take that away from me. The next morning I called Dr. Thompson. I want to create a foundation, he asked, in whose name I smiled, in the name of the one who was invisible. And so the Eleanor and Margaret Foundation was born, for women who care, that they forget, that are lost, a place with housing, careful job, and a room just with cups, all with names, Donna Rosa, Aunt Celia, Mrs. Marie, so that none of them have to forget who they are, because the greatest gift I received wasn't the money, it was the certainty that my life had meaning, and that even in silence, someone saw, and someone remembered. I returned to the old yard, alone. The kitchen light was still on, yellow, weak, but firm in the dark, like a heart beating slowly. I wasn't invited, I didn't warn you, I just arrived. The wind shook the trees, the same sound as 20 years ago, when I woke up early to make coffee, when the world still revolved around a simple gesture. Prepare his cup. The trailer no longer existed. Demolished. As if it had never been there. Only the cracked concrete remained, and a solitary flower sprouting between the stones. I sat in the rocking chair, the same one I brought with me, the only one I carried. The rest of what was mine, I left, because some things can't be taken with you, if they let themselves, like seeds. I sat where I had so often waited for him, where I prayed for him, where I cried for him, and I understood the love I gave was not in vain, even if it has not been recognized, even if it was traded for comfort, even though it was called a burden, because true love does not ask for a return, that it transforms whoever gives it. And I was transformed, not for the money, but for the courage to choose me. At that moment, I saw a car enter. Luxurious. Silent. So does Derek. Vanessa. Next door. The children behind that. They stopped. They left. Surprised. He said, "Grandma, what are you doing here?" I looked at him, for the eyes that once called me mother, and I replied, "I remember." He looked at the concrete. To the place where the trailer was. To the flowers sprouting between the stones, and said nothing. Then Vanessa said, "Dinner is ready." I got up, I grabbed my bag, and he said, "I'm not going in." Derek's eyes widened. "But it's your home." Smile. "No. It was my home now. It's just a place." He insisted, "You can stay, we have space. You don't have to live in the hotel." I looked at the kitchen light still lit, but nobody paid attention to her. No one felt it. No one remembered her. I already have a place, and that's not where they put me. That's where I choose myself. I went to the car, the same one that brought me, The driver opened the door. With respect, Derek ran. Hope he stopped in front of the car. Out of breath, no mask. I'm very sorry. It was the first time, in 20 years, I felt the weight of those words, but they weren't just his. They were from all time, from all the pain, of all the unrequited love. I looked deep into his eyes, and I asked, "You feel for me, or because you found out how much she left me?" He lowered his head. He didn't answer. And in that silence, I knew it wasn't regret. It was a loss. The loss of the myth he created. That I would always be there. Open the door. Come in. And before closing, he said, "The love I gave you was not wasted. It was planted. And now it is blooming elsewhere." The car left out this thought like someone who carries a whole life with them. I looked out the window. The kitchen light was still on, but I knew, the next night, it would no longer be lit, because I wasn't there anymore. Today, I drink my coffee in the garden, with the scent of jasmine, with the sound of the fountain, with the silence that heals, and when the wind shakes the leaves, I hear Mrs. Delaney's voice, "You deserve more." And I answer, "Now I know." And I look at the Eleanor and Margaret Foundation, the new building, the windows open, the cups with names, and you are. My light never went out. It just changed places, and now enlightens those who have also been forgotten. If this story touched you, tell me in the comments which lit window reminded you of home. Subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and come to the next story, where an oratory hidden under the bed held a promise that changed an entire life. Here, every memory still pulses. Each story is a thread, each memory an embroidery in time. Continue to the next story on the Grandma's Diaries channel.